Welcome to another episode of the Managing Happiness Show, where we interview successful entrepreneurs on how they manage to have a happy family life while dealing with the madness of entrepreneurship. I'm your host, David Henzel, and today's guest is Ted Rubin, who is the master of making personal connections. Ted is also the author of several books, to mention a few: The Return on Relationship and How to Look People in the Eye Digitally. Ted is a fellow marketer. He's the acting CMO of Brand Innovators and the co-founder of Prevailing Path, and used to be the principal shareholder of Collective Bias, which was acquired last November. Ted, congratulations to your success. I'm very happy to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, David. I'm really excited to be here. And, I love the topic. And, I think it's a challenge for all of us. I don't think anybody has this figured out. And it's certainly something that I had very big challenges in my life, which I'm sure we'll get into as far as family life went. And now I'm at a point in my life, like you, I've been fortunate enough to be a shareholder in a company that got acquired, and everybody thinks that solves all your things. But now, my business partner and I, John, we co-founded Prevailing Path. And a big part of what we're trying to do there, besides how do you use content properly, how do we help marketers, how is retail changing, truth be told, what we're really trying to figure out is how do we live a life that makes us happy? How do we include our family in things we're doing? How do we work around those kind of things? How do we yes, everybody needs to make a living, but how do we temper potentially our goals and ambitions to the point where we realize the things that might be more important? So I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about that.
Awesome, same here. And you talk about the things that always go through my mind, and also what I want to help people to realize is kind of what you really want out of life. What do you really, what really makes you happy, and what's your purpose, or what's your personal mission? Like in the course, I apply business principles to our personal lives, and I'm curious, do you have a written personal mission statement?
I don't. So,
Okay.
that's not really something I've ever been able to wrap my arms around in the way that I think before we started this call, you and I were chatting a little bit about software and tools that you use, and I've just never really been good at those things. But I'm also fortunate in that I tend to work a lot of those things out in my head. Like I am not just a gunslinger. I'm not just waiting for the moment and doing what I do. A lot of what I do is very strategic, but I tend not to lay it out in writing or in some kind of a format somewhere. I tend to work it out in my head. Now, I'm not advising people that's the way to do it, because you kind of have to have a knack for it. And I'm not saying that it might not be better if I finally put pen to paper and did it the other way. It's just never been my way. And, I try to work with the tools I've been given in that, Gary Vaynerchuk likes to tell people they have to be self-aware and only do things they're good at. And I have a big problem with that. I don't agree with that. I agree it's important to be self-aware of what you're best at, but I don't think that just not being good at something should stop you from doing it. But the other side of that, the part of what he says that is important, is you do have to, at certain points, take stock in yourself and say, you know what, I'd love to climb Everest, but if I made that a goal, it's probably never going to happen. Why don't I instead think about taking a trek to base camp, or going to Machu Picchu, or doing something else? And then maybe after I accomplish that, I can up it. But when you make goals too far out, they become impossible. So that's a long answer to your question. I don't write things down or plan them in that way, in the way that most people would think made a plan. And maybe when I do it in my head, part of my problem has been is I don't share it with enough people, like your spouse or your girlfriend or significant other or your children. But I definitely love the approach you're taking, and the fact that I also don't do those things in business. So I see so many people that do use these tools in business and then just leave them at the door when they go home. Why wouldn't you take the same things that have helped you formulate and configure and plan what you're doing, in your home life? Now, I also think there are a lot of differences. I think when you're in a job, you know what your job is. Now, granted, there are different types of jobs. If you're an entrepreneur, your job might be way bigger because you're starting something from scratch and you're really not sure where it's going to go, and you might have really high and lofty goals. Whereas an employee, your goals tend to be much more structured because you were hired as the vice president of marketing, and what the company brought you on for was to get the company much deeper into mobile and social and whatever. And you're probably given from the company all the things they have expectations for you to accomplish. And you've probably been brought on, at least later in your career or even earlier, for something they feel that you're totally capable of accomplishing. Now, the reason I talk about that is that in your personal life, it's very different. Okay, very often we have no clue of what we're really capable of accomplishing. Our brains and our minds change as we grow older and mature and evolve, and as our life changes. So, you're in a job, and these days we all know that very few people stay in jobs for 20, 30 years. The odds are the company's not going to change that dramatically over the period of time that you're given to accomplish something. But now let's think about our personal lives. Man, you're 19 years, 20, 22 years old, you meet a woman, you fall in love, you marry her a few years later, man, everything changes. I mean, and it's changing to the point where you cannot imagine it. Because just because we've been kids and lived in a family, clearly doesn't mean we know what being a father or a husband is. Even when we've maybe watched, even if we had a great example, even if we watched a great father or a great mother and we learned from them, number one is we're not them. Number two is we're growing up in a different time than them. And number three is our lives are going to be different than theirs. So I think that the planning, has to be much more short term. I think we can have goals and aspirations for what we want later, but I think it's very hard for us to really understand what any long-term goals and aspirations are because we have no idea where we're going to be with our family then, and things change so dramatically in families. So, and I think we kind of talked about this a little bit before the call, and because I didn't hear you talk a lot about what's going to happen 20 years from today, although obviously you want to have your retirement goal, and yes, I have to put away money, and do I want my kids to go to college, those kind of things you might have to plan for early. But I think a lot of it has to do with, okay, we just had kids, whose responsibility is it to change their diaper? Or, or what are we going to do with our weekends, and how much of our weekends are going to be spent with work? And that's going to also change from day to day, week to week, month to month, depending on the job we're in and what's being called for with that job and what's happening. And it's going to be affected by your family, because there are going to be times where your family doesn't need you as much. I mean, by the way, I'm a believer your family always needs you, and I'm a believer that, especially as a dad, you have to commit yourself to that, and you have to commit yourself to being there as much as possible, if not physically, but mentally. But those things change on and off. Your kid's having issues in school. Well, you got to be home and spending more time with them. Your child's not healthy. Well, clearly you're going to have to spend more time with that. Or everything's kind of going good. Now's a chance for me to devote a little more time somewhere else. So I kind of love the approach you're taking. Again, from what I heard, I'm sure there's a long-term planning aspect to it, but I love the idea of, what are we doing this year? How are we going to get where we're going? Our kid's 3 years old. We're still changing diapers. Damn, when is she going to get out of diapers? And where are we going to go with that? So I'd love to hear more from you. I'm happy to answer questions. But again, feel free to cut me off. Sometimes you ask me things and I can just keep going, and it might be too long. So feel free to say, okay, Ted.
Two thoughts on what you said. Is for the long-term goals, how we do it is we have our bucket list, kind of the experiences that we want to have and kind of the cool things that we want to experience. And for the short term, we have our annual goals that we plan out the year. And this has been working really well for us. And another thing, in terms of writing things down, I also was the same way, that I never wrote these things down. I thought like mission statements, vision statements, and all these things are, kind of a waste of time. I'd rather build more product. I don't want to waste this time with my startup. But at Maxident, we realized that we had a very clear mission statement, but then we lost it because we hired more and more strong people in different positions, new head of sales, new head of engineering, and then we kind of started to walk in 10 different directions because we never really were clear on communicating out what we actually want. So this really bit us in the back, and so we now I'm a big fan of actually writing these things down and being very clear.
Well, the good thing is, at least at home, you're not constantly hiring more people. So that's good. So, by the way, what I have to say is that I guess in a way I do write things down. I don't, and like I said earlier, like a lot of the planning I do in my head. And I think for instance, in my life, I use hashtags. And some people give me a hard time for the fact that I keep growing my community of hashtags, because what I'm not doing is I'm not gaming the hashtag I'm not doing the gaming the hashtag game by hashtag community, hashtag networking, hashtag, I'm not using other people's hashtags. What I do is I develop my own that are about my life. And I think that in a way I'm using those the same way that you're using a mission statement, because I'm using it for two reasons. I include it in so much of what I do because first and foremost, it's a reminder to me. It's me saying, David, there's no let up. And I know there's no let up. It's me saying, this dad won't quit. Because guess what? It's been hard. I have to fight to keep my kids in my life to this day at 20 and 22. Those are the ages of my girls. My ex still makes it very difficult for them to see me. So for me, it's a constant battle. And that's a reminder, or R&R for return on relationship. But it's also a way of me letting the world know that
That's actually cool way of thinking about this. I really like this. It's kind of like your core values as hashtags, as a constant reminder for you and everybody. It's really nice.
A constant reminder for me. And I've had people say to me, "Oh my God, Ted, it's been all the year. You're still like everything. Why do you put R&R on everything?" I'm like, because I don't put it on everything. Every once in a while, I won't when it's something I don't think is related. But it's my way of. It's a reminder. It's a reminder to me. It's a reminder to you, and it's a way of me getting that into your head. That, and again, I've also shifted, R&R, and there's a story behind that, and we probably don't have enough time on this podcast for it, why it's hashtag R&R instead of ROR or return on relationship. But I've tried to use ones that are actually like, that make sense as a word, like no let up. Anybody understands what no let up means. Anybody understands, they might not know the whole story, but they get the gist of it. Just like this dad won't quit, you get the gist of it. Be good to people. You certainly get the gist of it. Just be nice. You get the gist of it. So for me, and it's funny because you said you like that. I've also never thought of it in this respect, but but I know that's how I use it. So I think for me, that's my mission statement and my reminders.
So I'm a really big fan on return on relationships. Like everything that I accomplished in business is due to relationships. It's kind of like that led me to my biggest success. And I was talking to Corey Blake, who put out the card game Ruinability is Sexy. I don't know if you heard about it. And he has the concept of like how we make deeper connections. And the idea is that if you're vulnerable, if you basically share deep stuff with people, if you just don't talk about the weather, then you make very easy connections. And I think that's also something that is kind of goes hand in hand with the return on relationship.
Well, and how to look people in the eye digitally. The whole point behind the book, How to Look People in the Eye Digitally, is to do more than just click a button, to do more than just like something, to do more than just say, like, when you walk by somebody and you say the expression, "How you doing?" and you don't even wait for the person to tell you. Because it's, or you say hi, or you say, like I have different, I try to think about what I'm doing. If I am not looking for any kind of engagement, I will walk by somebody and just say hi, because it doesn't require anything more than hi. But if I say to somebody, "How was your day?" I have to be prepared that the engaging person might say, "My day's good, how's yours?" Now try that sometime, and you'll notice if you just watch. So, like, what you should do is send somebody out to do it so you can observe. And very often when that person says, "My day is great," the other person never even answers them because they weren't even waiting for an answer. So I try to use expressions that actually do what I want them to do. It's the same thing when I'm online, that if you watch me, you can see when I want to converse and when I don't. When I want to converse, I use expressions that engender somebody to talk back, that encourages them, empowers them. How are you? How is your day? If someone says to me, "Hey, Ted, I'm really curious about what's a definition for return on relationship?" And if I come and give it to them, if I want that to end, I'm going to end it with, "Here you go. It's this. Have a nice day." That means I don't want to talk. Now, or if I'm trying to keep the conversation going, at the end I'll say, "So what do you think of that?" Or, "How's your day going?" Or and I don't have to think about it as much as I used to, but it's something I actually think about. And I think that people need to be more self-aware of those kind of things, about how you create conversation. So look people in the eye digitally. It means to do what you and I would do when we're actually face to face. I'm looking at what you're wearing. I'm noticing that I like your necklace. Your shirt's good. I might make a comment about your hair, but mostly online we don't do that. But we can, because there's so much information out there. So if you want to have a conversation, just click on that person's LinkedIn profile or Facebook profile and mention something like, hey, it looks like you had a great weekend at the zoo with your kids. I mean, I was just with someone today, and I know that she was going, I know she likes me, but I don't think that she checks out my Facebook page every day. But she clearly went there because she was able to say, so how was your weekend? She saw that I was with my daughter in D.C., and she was able to comment about it, which shows somebody that you actually have interest in them.
Interesting how to navigate the new online world. Well, not that new anymore, but like kind of how analyzing how we socially behave on social media.
Well,
right?
what's unfortunate about it, I think, and by the way, I actually look at this as an opportunity for guys like you and me. What's unfortunate is how few people have really bothered to take the time to understand how this engagement works, or what you're gaining and what you're losing, and how to get back something you might be losing, or even to look at their kids and making a comment like, oh, our kids, they don't even know how to talk to each other. They might not have the same face-to-face skills we have, but their digital skills they're communicating at such a higher level than we ever communicated. Because it's constant communication, and it's multiple communication. So you and I, when we were younger, when we were in college, or when we were hanging out shortly after, we had to go out to a bar to see where our friends were. We'd call them. When I first got out of school, there weren't even answering machines. But even if there was, you got the interesting, hey, it's David, I'm out partying. See you later, I'll talk to you. And then what do? You'd say, oh, David and some of the guys sometimes hang out down at Raleigh's, and you go down to the bar, and they're not there. And you say, hey, has anybody seen the guys? And then you go to another bar. Now, these kids are all on mass texting lists and WhatsApp lists and Snapchat lists, that they all know where each other are, and they're communicating at scale. In other words, when I'm communicating with you, 20 of our other friends are what I call participating vicariously in that conversation, because they're on the string and they're watching it. And then they actually do engage when there's a reason to, like, hey, I'm going to so-and-so, or I won't be there. Even if it's just like my daughter, your kids are young, obviously, but how old are your kids?
My daughter's 3.5.
Okay, right. So you're not texting with them yet. But like my daughter, if I'm lucky, I get a 2-letter word as a reply to almost anything. A big answer would be, what do you think? That would be a big with me. Yeah. But these guys, these kids are communicating at a much more scaled level than we ever did. And their communication skills are actually much stronger than ours. They're just different. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't like to see them build up better face-to-face skills. And by the way, I also think it's a misnomer when everyone says, oh, Gen Z don't know how to talk to each other. Bullshit. They just don't want to talk to you. They talk to each other. They talk to each other fine. And I think what a lot of people do when they're prognosticating about millennials and Gen Z is they forget what they really are. They're young people. They're not different. They're not from another planet. They're a different. Every generation has certain differences.
Yeah, it's always the same thing. Like complaining about the new generation, how different they are. And I think back that was the same thing.
I would say 75 to 90% of the differences, and probably closer to 90% of why they're different from us, is because they're young. I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, there was this whole big thing that suburbs were dying, cities are going to thrive, because millennials don't live in the suburbs. Of course they didn't. They're in their 20s. Now all of a sudden millennials are in their 30s and suburbs are thriving. And my other favorite one was, insurance is going to die because millennials aren't buying insurance. Who bought insurance when they were 22 years old? I didn't. It was hard enough. The only reason I bought car insurance is because I couldn't drive my car without it. You didn't care about health insurance. And now all of a sudden, oh my God, life insurance is thriving and evolving because millennials are all buying insurance. Of course they are, because they're having kids.
They're having kids.
And they're buying houses and all the things that insurance covers. So I just, Melissa Proctor, who is the CMO of the Atlanta Hawks, down the basketball team, says that what she's done in her company is they don't call them Gen Z, they don't call them millennials, they call them young people. When they want to differentiate between them, they call them future generations.
I mean, makes sense. Otherwise, like, when you say millennials, always like potentially some negative vibe swings with it, because there's so much stuff on the media. But talking about young people.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, excuse me. Talking about young people, I'd like to segue into the dad that doesn't quit. Another of your, the hashtags and things you talk about, and you're very open about this. So it's awesome that you're on the show and share these things. Your ex-wife, after you got divorced, wanted to keep your daughters away from you.
Yes.
And you really had to fight to keep them and to engage with them. And would be awesome if you share the story.
Well, it's a long story. Unfortunately, my ex has issues. She has something called borderline personality disorder. I'm not a doctor, so I can't really explain everything about it. But most importantly, is it mimics bipolar disorder, where there are ups and downs, and everybody in their life is responsible for their happiness other than them, and it makes living with them very difficult. Because what I used to say when I was married, when I did not understand what this was, and I can't tell you I truly understand it now, but I used to say that she was happiest when she was unhappy. And I'm a pragmatist. I'm a guy. Yeah, I'm a fixer. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I want to fix problems. I mean, that's just what we do. But also, I'm a pragmatist. Like, I look at people and I'd say, okay, so-and-so, every time I'm supposed to meet with David, he's always an hour late. I like David. I want to keep meeting with him. I'll just know that he's always an hour late, and I won't worry about being ready exactly on time, or even more so, your sister. So my ex's sister, it was perpetually late, hours and hours. And at 40 years old, my ex would still get crazy about it. She'd make plans. We'd have plans at 1 o'clock, and I'd look at her and go, Lauren,
she's going to be late.
She's not going to be here till 3 or 4 o'clock. So I'm happy to be here, but let's not make anything that's time related. Let's not cook food that's going to be ready. And every time she'd be like, no, she told me she'd be on time, and she could never wrap her arms around the fact. And what I ended up realizing, because she was a smart woman, because I'm looking going, how dumb can you be? How can you think? But it wasn't a lack of intelligence. It was that she thrived on that kind of a feeling. She loved being angry. She loved blaming things on people. And it was a very difficult way to live. But I lived with it because I wanted to be with my kids. And I put off my family. My parents were married. My parents were together when they were 16 and 18 until into their mid-80s when they passed.
That's
so
awesome.
my parents are certainly not people that encourage divorce. My brother's been married since he was in his mid-20s. He's now in his 60s. But all of them were like, you have to get out of this. And I'm like, I can't get out of this, because somewhere inside I knew there'd be a problem. But more than that, I wanted to wake up every morning and see my children. I wanted to go to bed at night, and I'll bet you do this at some points. But you go over and make sure they're breathing. So like you kind of like put your head by their mouth and you put your hand on their heart, and it gives you a reassurance that you're not going to bed with something wrong. And it also gives you this, it overcomes you with this feeling of being a parent and the important job you have. So unfortunately, eventually I was involved in this wonderful world of the internet and Web 1.0, and had a crash, and my business turned around, and we had to change things that we were doing, and my ex divorced me. And unfortunately, I got a view into what it would be like, because she was desperate for my girls' attention. She always was. When we were together, she would always say to my daughters, when they were little, they would be 3 and 4, 5 years old, and she'd say, who do you love more, mommy or daddy? And my girls were trained to say, I love you both, but I love mommy a little bit more. It's just what she needed. And I knew this would be a problem. And unfortunately, when we separated, it was really impossible. And I can't tell you I understand it, because to this day I don't. Children need their parents. They need both parents. I would never want her out of their lives. with all that she's done and all the horrible things to them and the way they have to live their lives. I mean, they can't call me Ted, and they can't call me Dad in front of her. They have to call me Ted. They're not allowed. Okay, they're not allowed to mention my name. I'm not really their father. I mean, the things that they have to go through are horrible, but I still understand that their mother's incredibly important to them. It's their mother. It's their blood. It's the woman who took care of them their whole lives. So it really caught me off guard when I knew that she'd be difficult, but hey, come on, we all have divorces are difficult and relationships are difficult. But I never expected that one day I would be told I couldn't come on her property and I couldn't show up at the school and I couldn't have my kids. And this was after a bunch of years of being demeaned in front of them, being put down in front of them, saying she hopes I die in front of them, all these horrible things that my girls had to hear, and then jump into my arms in my car and tell me that they don't feel that way. And now all of a sudden she stopped letting me see them and started telling them that I make bad decisions, and mainly because I didn't want them to go to a private school that she thought they should go to because I thought they were very happy where they were, or whatever it happened to be. And it was very difficult. And unfortunately, the system in this country is set up in a way that it's just very, very difficult for a man to win back his child. Many of us are convinced when we get divorced that it's better for our kids to have a primary home and to be with a dad like every other weekend and let's say one night a week, which is what I had. And usually that one night a week isn't even an overnight. And I get that. I get it's hard for a child to move back and forth. And a lot of us are encouraged to agree to those things. And what that means is the mother becomes what's called the custodial parent. And in legal terms, and I'm not a lawyer, so please don't quote me on legal matters, but basically the custodial parent has what's called day-to-day decision-making power. And it gives them a lot of power over the relationship. And also, the mother has primary custody of the child because of that. So if they all of a sudden say, you can't have the child, you're not innocent until proven guilty. You're guilty until proven innocent, and now you have to go and win back those rights. And it's incredibly difficult. And unfortunately, what I've seen from all the experience I've had and the times unfortunately, the years I was around the courts and all the reading I did is that a lot of dads give up. Now, by the way, I am not in any way saying that dad are better parents. I am not in any way that saying that there aren't bad dads, because there are plenty of bad dads, and I can tell you, having to be in the courts for so many years, I met plenty of them firsthand. But what I will say is there are a lot of really great dads, or dads that just simply want to be with their children. They might not be the best dad. They might be a lousy ex-husband. They might have trouble even paying the bills they're supposed to pay. But they're still a father of a child, and more important than it is to them, that child needs their parent. Just like I want my daughters to have a relationship with their mother, regardless. I just wish it was less controlling and they would feel more open to spending time with me. Because the way it's been explained to me is they're suffering from Stockholm syndrome. They relate to their captor. They're afraid to displease her. Therefore, my situation with them is very difficult. But very early on, and I don't know if it has to do with the family I grew up. I'm sure it's a part of everything. I grew up in a family where, family was very important. Family was everything. You did whatever you could to make sure that you were there for your family. I grew up with a coach who I'm going to visit later this week. I see him every year. He retired to Pine, Arizona, and him and his wife just taught me. My coach used to say, it's never over. Like, do you know the expression, it's not over till it's over? Like Yogi Berra, it's not over till it's over. It's not over till the fat lady sings. Well, my coach's line was that it's never over. There's always another match, another challenge, another opportunity. There's always another challenge. There's always something that you have to face, and it never ends. And every year I was on the team, some wise-ass new kid on the team would raise his hand and say, Coach, what about when you die? And his answer would be, it's not over then either, because your legacy lives on.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And this is just what was always ringing in my head. I mean, a lot of coaches, you lose a match. It was all about, oh my God, you lost that match. My coach is always, there's going to be another match. What did you learn from it? What can you do better next time? And by the way he coached was if you wrestled and 20 matches in the season and you went 0-20, you lost every match, you still won because you showed up for every one of those matches. And that showing up is 90% of the battle. And I just made a decision early on that there was no way I was ever giving up my kids. I mean, I had friends, guys I respect, who would say to me, dude, if it was me, I'd be out. Like I would just stop seeing the kids. I would stop fighting the battle. I would go away. I'd wait until they were grown to come back. And to me, that was just never an option. And so, I will tell you, it's not only caused me pain, it certainly caused my daughter's pain. Because me being there caused strife and issues and going to
Friction.
court and friction and fighting. I would still advise any dad to never give up and fight for his rights to see his kids. What I would have done differently is that I might have done a few more of the things. Now, by the way, I'm told in retrospect that no matter what I did, my ex would have found more challenges for me. Now I'm looking back on it and I'm saying, you know what? Why didn't I just let her go to private school? So it would have put me more into debt. Okay. Why didn't I just buy my daughter a second wardrobe so she didn't have to bring clothes from her mother's house, even though her mother shopped at Neiman Marcus and Nordstrom, and I was already paying for it with my child support and couldn't afford it. I should have just taken another credit card, bought her the clothes, because it would have been less stress on my daughter.
Drama.
Okay, that's the way I regret and look back and sometimes talk to other dads. But
it doesn't fix the underlying problem, right? It's just like
exactly. And I will say that I've been told by experts and ones that were involved directly and knew who she was and knew the whole situation, that no matter what I did, she would have found more. There would have been the next thing I had to do. There would have been the next thing I wasn't doing. There would have been another challenge. There would have been another check to write. That there was no way I could have done that. It's just hard for me. But what I do tell dads, clearly, there's a few pieces of advice I give, and I don't know if you have dads in your audience here that are divorced or getting divorced or have kids or whatever. I tell them, first of all, never give up any of your rights with your children, even when the therapists tell you it's in their best interest. Get full joint custodial and legal. I had full joint legal custody and I thought I was covered. I wasn't, because of the custodial issues. So I urge any dad to get full joint custodial and legal custody. Once you have that, you can then say, you know what, they'd be better off staying at your house a little bit more than mine for whatever reasons. That can be their primary home, but you are still half the custodial parent on paper, which means you can never be told you can't pick the child up at school, or you can't come to our house to get them, or you can't do whatever it is, because they don't have that day-to-day decision-making power. I would also say, as much as it's within your capabilities, take as much of the stress off your kids as you can, even if it puts more on you. So if it means buying an extra wardrobe, look, it might not work, but try it. If then you find out no matter what you do, another thing comes up, then it might be at some point you have to draw the line. But anything you can do to make it easier for them. If they're going to camp and you want to pick them up and she wants to take them, and you say, hey, this is easy, because you and I, we're businessmen. We think very logically. We say, well, you take her, I'll pick her up, or I'll take her and you pick her up. Let's do it 50-50. But you get a mom or a dad, by the way, this is advice for moms too, or you get the other person on the other side who says, no way, I'm taking them both ways. In the end, you're probably better off just saying, okay. Now, again, I'm not sure if things would have turned out different. And I truly don't regret anything I did. I showed up every time my daughters were on stage. But what I learned to do as they got older, when they were young, I would get there 2 hours early. I would get the front row, because my ex wouldn't let me talk to them after the show. So I wanted to make sure they saw me so I could get like the little wave from the stage. But as they got older and they knew I was there anyway, I would sit in the back. I would stay out of sight.
Oh wait, no. It must have been really tough times. Sorry you had to go through this, or you all had to go through this. That sounds really tough.
It was really tough, and it's still really tough.
A friend of mine, he went through a divorce, and he approached it also. He's in technology as well, and he found out that his wife was cheating on him, and he found lots of text messages. So, and he thought like, okay, I'll go downstairs, I'll physically throw her out of the house, I drive to this guy's house, beat him up, call an ambulance for him, and call the cops for me, and then that's that, right? Or I can handle it like a work issue. Data center down, we have to restore service. How do we, in an unemotional way, get this thing back up and running, basically. And so he packed the bag for her, like with 2 weeks worth of clothes, and said like, hey, I found this out about this, please take this bag and leave the house, and we'll figure things out. And they got divorced in record time. and he even overpaid in terms of, splitting up their
Right.
assets just to get the job done. And all his friends were like, "Oh man, this crazy blah blah blah, whatever," feeling cuss words. She doesn't deserve it. She's taking your money, yada yada. And he's like, "Yeah, I just want it to be over so I can move on." So like, kind of not being emotional, or like, not feeling things are not fair. Like in business, when shit goes south, and you think, "Oh, but that's not fair. Like nobody cares about this shit." You just want to,
Right.
fix things, right? Kind of restoring service, getting the data center back up. And this worked out really, really well for him, even though he quote unquote overpaid a little bit. But in the long run, you can also just drown a lot of money on lawyers and then have this big headache later on. So
But
I
but
think
I
it's
have to
in.
tell you to back up a second. I think that you're actually onto something in that respect, because let's take his idea a little bit step further, and especially if you include kids in the equation, and think about how can you plan it? How can you do it as if it's a software thing, and we're okay. Where do I want to be in a certain amount of time, and what do we have to do, and then start thinking about what the challenges might be. Like, because most of us don't do that. Like I remember, I thought, as bad as my divorce was, and the way my ex handled it, and me getting kicked out of the house and her making accusations, if I had sat back and thought about it and said, okay, I know who Lauren is. I know what she's probably going to do. She's probably going to make it really difficult for me to do some of these things. Maybe I could have planned for those things, whether it's setting aside some money for when I got a bill that I wasn't expecting, that I was not really responsible for. But you know what? It's easier to pay it than to pay an attorney to get rid of it. And those kind of things. I think the problem is we're usually in such an emotional state. And that emotional state can kind of hang with us, especially when children are involved, because there's no, okay, I'm divorced, move on. I never have to see this person again. You have to continually interact with them, and that's a lever for both of you that you have to think about. And then the other problem is there's two sides to this. No matter how logically and no matter how appropriately you approach it, if the other person doesn't, you're screwed. You know,
And I think it still goes back to planning. For example, if for example, having a prenup upfront that is super fair, but like kind of lays out like, hey, in case we have any problems, this is how we're going to dissolve these things.
I will tell you that when it comes to divorce, the planning is very difficult, because even with a prenup, I mean, like your friend, I gave my ex most of what we had. I had the reason she was divorcing me at the time is because Web 1.0 crashed, and I wasn't getting paid by my clients, and we were in debt, and I had a great business going that was kind of falling apart. But even with all that, I gave her everything. She had the house; it was worth a lot of money. Unfortunately, she forgot what comes along with that is keeping up the house. I urged her to sell it because she certainly didn't need a 5-bedroom house with her and 2 kids. But the point I'm making is I lived up to everything in our agreement, but it wasn't enough. And it wasn't, and even though, now it would be one thing, and by the way, there are marriages where the husband then makes a lot of money, and I'm not even talking about the guys that hide money or cheat. Guys, totally honest, you get divorced, everything's split fairly, and then the husband or the wife hits it big. But that wasn't the case. Everything she wanted were things that I couldn't afford at the time. Most of it was because I was so busy running back and forth, picking up my kids and doing what I had to do and paying back the debt I had built during our divorce, that people can just be very unreasonable. This isn't what, I mean, a line that a lot of people hear is, oh, this isn't the way I expected my life to be. Or this isn't the way I had it planned. So I want more, but meanwhile, you don't have more to give them. And no matter what the plans are, no matter what the prenup says, especially when there are kids involved, it rarely holds up in that respect. So again, let me just turn off this phone that's ringing. My main thing here is that it's about mindset, and it's about what's most important to you, and it's about attitude, perspective, which to me leads to mindset. And what you've got to say from the very beginning is, this is all about the kids. I'm going to do whatever I can to make this best for the kids. The things you can affect is, you can totally affect yourself. You can't affect what the person on the other side does. You can't expect what they ask you for. You can't expect what they want. But what you can do is, you can say, I have my kids every other weekend, and no matter what, I'm going to be there. No matter what. I have my kids every Wednesday night. No matter what, I'm going to be there. I'm going to call my kids every single night when they're not with me, like clockwork. Now, I'll tell you the way it got with me, and there's a lot of divorced dads out there that I know in the social community, and there's a bunch of them that I give a hard time to, because I see them traveling all the time. I see them on the road, and oh my God, I haven't seen my kids in a month and a half. I'm so happy to be home. And I'm like, what the hell is that about? I'm talking about divorced dads. And I'm like, you've got to commit to a schedule, and you've got to learn to I don't care if you're hot. I don't care if people are hiring you. I don't care if you think you're going to lose business. Your little girls, your little boys, they don't know that. All they know is daddy's not there. And I will tell you that you talk to anybody that knew me when my girls were younger and I was working, here's the way it would go. Someone would call me up and say, hey, Ted, we'd like you to speak at this event. Is August 5th your weekend? That was the exact term, your weekend. Because they knew that if it was my weekend, that means I had the girls and I wasn't coming. And they'd say, oh, that's your weekend. Maybe we can do it the next weekend. And to the point, and it was the same way during the week. Like, what night do you have your girls again? Oh, I'd have my girls for dinner Wednesday night. So I would normally, if it wasn't my weekend, I'd be available to travel late Wednesday night after my girls went home until Wednesday morning the next week. And then I'd have to be there for dinner. And if it was my weekend, I couldn't travel till that was over. And I could travel in between. And everybody knew that. They knew that if they were inviting me out to dinners, they knew that. Everybody knew I was never available on Wednesday nights until my ex changed it to Tuesday nights. But they knew that. And I also made it very clear. Those are the nights I'm not available. If you want me to speak at an event, if you want me to be at a meeting, any company I worked for knew that they couldn't plan for me to be somewhere if it was a weekend with my girls, because I would not be there. Because my one thing, and my girls have been through a lot, and right now they probably not say it, but I know in their heads, they know that dad was always, I never missed a time when I was supposed to be with them. One time I missed. It was the New York City blackout in 2000 and, I don't even remember what, 2005. And and everything got shut down, and I almost got out of the city because I normally left early anyway, because it was a night with my daughters, and then they shut down everything. I couldn't get out. It took me until 2 a.m. to get home. Luckily I did. And unfortunately my ex's line when I tried to see my girls the next night was, sorry, you snooze, you lose. Even though it was a blackout. But that was probably the only time I missed my night. And I just think it's so important.
That's really awesome that you
to make that
really,
clear.
To have these things in your life, to know what's really important to you, and kind of really scheduling it, and being on a lot of people, like you just mentioned, these dads that haven't seen their kids in a month and a half. Just like, we often forget, like, what's really important in life. What do you want out of life? What are the people that we care most about? And often we treat the people that we care or should care, that we love the most, we treat them the worst. Kind of how will you talk to your wife from time to time, or yelling at your kids at work? You would never do that,
Right.
So
and
very...
I just think it doubles and triples when you're divorced. Whether you're a mom or a dad, you need to give some kind of semblance of order to your kids. And look, it's also something that no one can ever take away from me. I've got it in here. No matter what happens with my daughters, and I'm sure if you watch the video that I made, and I think you said you did, you'll see at the end I said that no matter whatever happens with my daughters, nobody can ever take away from me what I feel in my heart. No one can ever take away from me the fact that I know that I was there every weekend, that I showed up always, that I was always there for the nights I had with them. No matter what I had to turn down, I would be there with them. And that's something.
You also said something that was really, really, really touching to me, like when your daughter blocked you on text messages. And, you said, like, but I need to communicate in case some, an emergency or so. And she was like, you'd be the last person I'd call anyway, which, like, must have been, like, brutal. And your response was really beautiful. I was like,
I said, after you call your mom and your stepdad, and your grandma, and after you call everybody, and they tell you that it's too late, it's too hard, it's too much, it's too far, you'll call me, and I'll say, where do I have to be and when?
That's really beautiful.
And I got to tell you, it was one of the few times. My older daughter has been very, very tough on me, and I saw her. I saw her this past week and for coffee, and it was very hard. I mean, when I'm with her, there's always a moment, and it's why I push for this, where she'll forget where she is, and she'll talk to me like I'm her dad. But then she catches herself. And when I asked her to drive me to the train, she refused. And I said, it's 2 miles away. And she said, look, I don't like you. And I'm not comfortable with you in my car. And I'm like, Danny, she goes, well, you've done terrible things to me. And I looked at her and I said, like, what are you talking about? Like, and I started to say it, and I never do. I never combat her on this because it's not time. According to everybody that knows anything, it doesn't matter. She's 22. She's not ready to hear this. And I almost started saying something. She said, don't even go there. Because she doesn't want to hear it. She doesn't want to have to face up to it. That all the things she has in her head are things that her mother put in her head, that that every time your dad touched you, he was inappropriately touching you, and every time he hugged you too hard, and when you were sick and he rubbed your belly. Dads don't do that. Yes, they do. But I can't have that discussion with her now. So it is very hard, but even just like when I had that discussion with her when she was changing schools, and when I was with her this time, and she said that to me, and she said, Dad, don't. I said, you're right. I love you. You don't want me in your car, that's fine. I'm just really glad that we were able to get together and have coffee, and I was able to hear her. And what I've learned to do, and I think this is a lesson for all relationships and for business, but really for your kids, is that I've learned to change my expectations to find good in what I get. So my daughter said something very hurtful to me. She wouldn't drive me. She wouldn't let me in her car. But she told me about her boyfriend, which she wouldn't the last time we were together. She answered questions. She gave me information that she told me the last time we were together she didn't want me to have, about where he works or what he does. It's her first boyfriend, so it's a very big deal. And it was something she really needed for her well-being. I'm very happy for her. And I was able to just be happy in that, to look at it and say, and then when she left, for a long time, my daughter wouldn't let me touch her. Back when this whole thing was going on and I started winning more time with my kids in the courts, my ex had to put a stop to it, so she accused me of sexually abusing my daughter. And she started out by doing it anonymously, because she went to all the people involved in our case and all the therapists and all the people at school, and they all refused to make a report because they said, we see your daughters every day, every week. There's nothing happening here. We would know. This is what we do. And so she made an anonymous phone call. But of course, that still goes on record. They know who made the call in the end. And of course, it was all proven wrong. And my daughter, right away, my daughter stood up for me, and I got a quick call from the courts, and they said, listen, this is what's happening. Don't worry. We're on top of it. We know it's not happening. But it still took 6 months to work its way through the system. And my daughter, from all the documents I saw, right away said, my daddy's great. This isn't happening. But over the years since then, my ex has spent every moment convincing her that I know you didn't. Right. I know you didn't think it happened, but you know the way you used to wrap your arms around your dad and wrap your legs around him when you hugged him, that's inappropriate. And you know when he'd rub your back, dads aren't supposed to do that. And you know when you had a bellyache and he rubbed your belly, he should have sent you home to me. And my daughter over the years has just, in order to, she's desperate for my ex's love. She's kind of accepted this, and she'll say things to me like, yes, you did. Now she'll never articulate. And the one time she started articulating on it, it came down to, remember that time you poked me? And I'll be like, yeah, I do. You hit your sister, and I'm your dad, and your sister was crying, and I was trying to show you what it felt like when somebody, does something to you. Dads do those kind of things, and then I remember that this time we got into this is years ago, and I said, and what else? Well, remember that time when we were leaving the house and you almost pushed me down the stairs? Like, who knows? I must have tripped or something, but meaning, the point I'm making is there was really no substance behind it. It's something that she's doing because she has to do it to protect herself, to have her relationship with her mother. And so what I do is I take what I can get. So there was a time where I touched my daughter's hand, she'd pull it away a couple of years ago. I would go to hug her, I'd get the stiff arm. now, this time when she left, even after telling me that she's not comfortable around me, when I went to hug her, she shook her head and said, don't. But when I touched her, she didn't push me away. She didn't hug me. She turned the other direction, but she let me touch her, and then I kissed her. And again, she didn't do the wipe off with the hand, or she didn't get angry at me. So to me, I look at that as a win. I look at that as progress.
I really admire how dedicated you are to this, and I feel really sorry for you that you had to go through all these horrible things. And I'm very curious, what made you so emotionally resistant, or what helped you to go through this? Like what tools did you use? Did you start meditating? Did you, I don't know, see a counselor? Like how did you gain this emotional strength to go through this and to talk about this stuff and to have this, still very, happy spirit, or,
I don't know. I'll tell you that I think a lot of what we learn from people around us. I've been very, very fortunate. I had great parents. They both lost a parent at an early age. They learned to be resilient. My dad had to help take care of his mother. He didn't have much. He was in sales. He had some good career things, some that didn't go so well. But I guess I just grew up in a household with a dad that made it clear that you just don't give up. Look, I wear this bracelet, no let up, and it's no let up has a lot of meaning. It doesn't mean no let up, you always got to be working. It means no let up, you always have to be there for your family. You always have to be there for yourself. You have to have time, find time. There's no let up finding time for yourself or finding time for vacation. There's no let up being there for your friends or your family. There's always going to be somebody with a challenge. And I guess I learned a lot from my parents. I learned a lot from my coach, who again was just, he himself was never the best wrestler. He was just one of the hardest working guys. The guy he held up to us as an idol when we were kids was Dan Gable. Dan Gable could be considered the best wrestler, this Olympic wrestler this country ever produced. But there was nobody that will ever tell you he was the most talented wrestler this country ever produced. What they will tell you is, beyond doubt, he was the hardest working wrestler and athlete that almost anybody knew, meaning that you can overcome a lot if you're willing to put in a lot. And my coach was that was the kind of wrestler and coach he was. He was never the best, but he put his kids first. He put building men way more important than winning matches. And I say this all the time, and I think I said it on the video. I'm not sure, because there was a buddy, a video storyteller who came to me, who I'd done some work with for Google, that wanted to tell that story, and he put it together. But I'm not sure I would have done it without a lot of the training I had from him. And it wasn't so much training as an athlete; it was training as a man. It was training as a human being. It was a training that as a leader, if something's important to you or somebody around you, then you just don't give up. And then I'm also very lucky. I had incredible friends. I still do. I mean, I had, there was Michael, and very directly involved. There were 4 people. There was this guy, Michael Olstein, who is I know since sleepaway camp. There is my friend Donna Lamonsoff, who I know since junior high. There was my brother, my older brother Jeff, and there was my buddy Bruce, who I live with down here now, who was my college roommate. And they were there so much in support of me. My buddy Michael and a few other friends, when I ran out of money and I ran out of the ability to borrow on credit cards. I mean, in 2010, I was $300,000 in debt, paying legal bills. And they funded a couple of hundred of that. But more importantly, they allowed me to call them and just, when you have a friend who just keeps talking about the same thing and you're like, I don't want to hear about this anymore because they're just not that good a friend, or you don't want to be brought down with them. They let me talk through everything. I would call Michael after every meeting with my attorney. He actually helped me pick my attorney. I met 20 attorneys in Long Island. I narrowed it down to 3 because everybody was telling me I couldn't get my kids back. And I narrowed it down to 3, and out of those 3, I couldn't make a decision. One was the intellectual decision. Like, intellectually, he seemed like the right guy. One guy on paper seemed to be the right guy, and one guy was in here. And I didn't tell Michael who either of the 3 were.
What your thought is?
I just brought him with me to see them, and he had to figure it out for himself. He went with me to meet each one another time. I had met each of these guys probably 5 times already. And by the way, this was my buddy from sleepaway camp, who we called Spider. because when we were 11, he wanted to prove he was tougher than everybody else. So he straddled a bonfire and ate a spider. And to prove you were as tough as him, and to this day, he's turning 60 in December like I am, and we call him Spider. And Spider came with me to see all these three guys, and
That's
he
awesome.
knew exactly which was which. And at the end, we both went with the guy that we felt in our heart. And this guy
Mm.
got me. But Michael from then read every email. I would blind copy him on every email. So we could talk about it. I would call him after every time I met with the lawyer. Every time I went to court, my friend Donna would also let me talk about it, but more from an emotional standpoint. She knew my girls, and she helped me with my daughters to the point where when the courts appointed attorney for my daughters said, listen, I know your ex moved farther away, and you've been staying where you are, and it's not your fault, but you need to move closer. She's not going to,
Mm.
you have to. It's going to be easier for the girls. And I did. I picked up, I broke a lease, and I moved. And my friend Donna helped me decorate my daughter's rooms. She bought them their bedding. And then my older daughter was turning 13, and Donna went and filled up her drawer with everything my daughter could possibly need for when she had her period.
Mm.
And she bought every brand. And I said, what are you doing? She goes, look, she's going to be here sometime, and this is going to happen. And Lauren, her mom, is going to make like it's a calamity, and you're going to be totally prepared. And it was 100% right. My daughter had a bad experience. She was all upset. She called me up. She called her mom. Her mom said, you have to come home. And she's like, no, Mom, Dad has everything. And her mom's like, yeah, but does he have this brand and that brand? And I heard Danny go, he has every brand. Because Donna bought, I would have had no clue what to do. She filled up a cabinet with everything imaginable. And again, I was really short of money. She didn't ask me to pay for it. Because I would have been like, why do we need 10 brands? I would have been a typical guy.
Mm.
Well, pick one. Let's get the one that's on sale, but she bought it all. And she saved the day for me. And I got to tell you, that's just one example. But time and time again, I would go over her house with the girls. She had a daughter a lot older than them. Matter of fact, I'm going to her daughter's wedding in 2 weeks up in New York. Her daughter would spend time with my girls because she was like a big girl and they loved her. And they would have me over their house for holidays so that my girls would feel like they were part of a family instead of just being home alone with me. And my buddy Bruce, was there for me in every way he could. And I have another buddy, Joe, who's a retired cop, who was the girls' godparent. And he was a retired police officer, and he would take off days from work so I could take them to a water park because they were too little to ride by themselves. So each of them would have someone to ride with. I will tell you right now that without them, there's no way I could have done this. So I think, I know this sounds like a cliche, but it was a team effort. I can't take all the credit myself. But I have to tell you, for me, I grab a hold of myself, and I've kind of been able to do that my whole life. When things are going wrong or things aren't where I am, I can sit down and talk to myself. I've always been able to do that. Or I lay down and I take a nap, and my mind works through things. I'm a very prolific dreamer. And I've just been able to stabilize myself. And the few times that I couldn't throughout this, God bless, I had friends that were able to do it for me. And now, look, it's a constant battle. It's like anything else. You've got to stay vigilant. You got to pay attention. You got to watch the way your feelings are going. I'm with my daughters and I have to think about it. I don't think now's the time to talk about this. I want to bring up to Nikki the fact that she's spending a lot of money on my credit card, but now might not be the time because I want her to enjoy the evening. When can I strategically do it at a better time where it'll make the right impression and not hurt something I have with her? So look, it's a constant struggle, but so's life. Right? I mean, anything we do. So is business. I mean, you want to relate all this to business. If you just go out and do your thing and you don't constantly evolve and adapt and pivot and move, no matter what you're doing. I don't care if you're a teacher or you're a contractor. You've got to constantly be upping your game. And that's the way it is with me. I don't know. It's a hard thing for me to answer, and I've babbled on long enough.
But I really admire how you live up to your values and how that's in your persistence. It's like really hats off how you
And
march
then
through
remember,
this. And
do you remember how earlier I talked about how hashtags are like a reminder for me. They're like my mission statement.
Yeah, it's
I wear them. I mean, this is my no let up bracelet. My necklace has return a relationship on one side and no let up on the other.
on the other.
Because this is a constant reminder for me. I look at it on my wrist. You know, this isn't marketing. This isn't me wanting people to say, "Oh, Ted's no let up." Everyone thinks it's marketing. This is my life. This is what keeps me going. You know, and then we have to look at ourselves and say, what do we stand for? And I've always stood for never giving up. I want to continue to. So
that's
part
really
of it
awesome.
part of it is not letting myself down.
I have actually, when I prepared for this interview, I have like 20 more questions for you, but we're unfortunately about to run out of time. Maybe I have to ask you to come on another time because really got to really in.
I would love to, and I believe, David, you live in the LA area. Is that correct? Or
I used to live in LA, but I'm in LA like once a quarter. We moved to Bodrum, Turkey in December. I'm originally from Germany, and
you haven't
we want to be close.
You haven't updated your profile.
No, I have not. I have to do that. To wrap this up,
I was going to say that I'm going to be in LA for a week in September, and if you were there, I would have loved to have gotten together with you. But I don't have any plans at the moment to come to Turkey, but maybe in the future, you never know.
Awesome, yeah. We're in Bodrum, Turkey. It's like a vacation destination. It's really nice. So whenever you want to come by, be my guest. I have one question that I always ask everybody, which is, what are the 3 books that influenced you the most in your life, and what is the last book that you've read?
Oh boy. So one of the books that's influenced me the most is called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
I saw this on the other podcast that I'm same here.
I call it the best social media book ever written. Because it's the best advice ever. It's better than any social media book written by any social media pundit. It's what everybody should read. I have a copy of it on my phone, on my iPad. I have an original copy that Jeremy Waite bought for me over in the UK.
That's awesome.
That he found and sent to me. You know, it's hard. You know, I obviously I can tell you what's the latest book I'm reading. It's called Hillbilly Elegy. And I recommend it to, and I'll tell you the way I found out about this book. And you can find it if you go back into my history on Facebook or anywhere else. I met a 84-year-old woman on the beach who I live right near the beach. And I try to take a walk on the beach every day. I'm 4-minute walk from the beach. And there was this woman who I saw like a couple days in a row, and she just looked very sweet, and she was moving kind of slowly, and she had her big hat on, and clearly a woman that finds time every day to go to the beach. And we kept walking by each other, and I would say hello to her, and finally she started talking to me. And we just became friends. And I'm looking forward because she comes back in November. She's a snowbird, so she's not here in the summer. And we were talking about politics. We were talking about, other things. And one day she says, if you want to have a better understanding of people that voted for Donald Trump, you should read this book, Hillbilly Elegy. And I'm not going to say any more. It's a novel. So don't get scared away by the fact that what I just said. It's not a politics book. It's just a book that's about people, and maybe the kind of people that you're not used to in your everyday life, and it might open your eyes a little bit. So that's the latest. And the other one was just another book that influenced me. It's hard to nail it down to one, but. Two of the books that are my favorite of all time are called Winds of War by Herman Hoke. It's about World War II. It's called Winds of War and War and Remembrance. I don't like war books because of the war aspect. Same thing for war movies. Something that's really a part of who I am is friendship and loyalty.
Which is in these extreme times, like similar to what you went through with your former spouse, right? With the friends that were there for you, it's similar to what happens in these extreme situations.
I've had a lot of experiences with that. I also had a business. I had a very successful business when I was young, in the investment field, and then the market turned and my business failed, and I was high flying as a young person. I had a lot of money, and I very quickly found out who my friends were. And you get a lot of surprises. People that you never expected to be there for you walk in the door and tell you that they're there for you, and people that you thought were your best buddies desert you. And there's a lot of learning in that. And maybe because of that, I am incredibly enamored of things that have to do, and to me, war, unfortunately, is one of the places where friendship and loyalty and standing up for others becomes a very big thing. And so I highly recommend Winds of War and War and Remembrance. First of all, I like history. It's about our history. It's about a critical time in the world. So that's really great. It's based on real events, even though it's a novel. But again, and it wasn't a book, but like one of my favorite movies is Rudy. From the kid who played for Notre Dame, who everyone said could never do it. I just love things about people that overcome odds, that are there for each other, where friendship overcomes a lot of other things, and loyalty. And I love. I don't know if I got it exactly correct, but what is the Marine Corps credo? Or loyalty above all else except honor. So. Loyalty, I think, is incredibly important, but it has to be intertwined with honor.
With honor. Otherwise, if your friend asks you to do something that's wrong, you can't do it. Ted, this was really awesome. Thank you very much for being on.
Well, I really enjoyed it. I'm sorry. I realized we went overtime. I think you've got somebody there trying to get you off. And So go do what you have to do. But I would love to have another talk another time. So just reach out, and we'll set it up whenever it works for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. It's been great.